I'm stepping into a real-time analysis mode here, because this topic touches not just cinema but culture, morality, and the responsibilities studios carry when they handle sensitive real-world trauma. Let me reframe the conversation as a fresh, creator-driven take that feels like a new video, with bold opinions, vivid storytelling, and clear implications. I think the question at the heart of the drama isn't simply whether a twist lands. It's what happens when art leans into provocative trauma to fuel romance comedy energy. Personally, I believe the core idea is, can a film that orbits around a school shooting's shadow still feel light, hopeful, or even morally complex without diminishing the real victims? What makes this really interesting is how different audiences bring their own traumas into the cinema seat. Some will watch for daring narrative risk. Others will feel it's an uneasy intrusion. From my perspective, the debate isn't about consuming tragedy, but about who profits from that consumption, and whether the wit serves a purpose beyond shock. One key idea to unpack is the film's tonal hybrid. A romantic comedy that hinges on a character admitting they once planned a school shooting. A detail I find fascinating is how genre expectations are weaponized here. In rom-coms, the rules are lightness, miscommunication, and a hopeful ending. But when you tether it to a real, devastating event, the boundaries blur. What this suggests is that narrative elasticity can surprise us, but it also risks normalizing violence if the discussion is framed too casually. If you take a step back and think about it, the twist asks the audience to hold two truths: love in progress, and the gravity of violence that permanently alters lives. Another important lens is the casting choice. Zendaya as a beloved lead humanizes even flawed, provocative choices. What many people don't realize is that star power inherently amplifies the ethical weight of a character's backstory. The same actor can make audiences empathize with someone who commits or contemplates harm, and that can be a double-edged sword. It can spark nuanced exploration, or it can soften accountability in the viewer's mind. From my vantage point, that dynamic is the film's most controversial engine. It invites a larger conversation about what drama asks of us when real-world tragedies are used as fictional scaffolding. The reactions from families affected by violence add another layer. Tom Mauser's critique highlights a core tension: the commodification of trauma for entertainment. I don't trivialize his pain, but I do think it raises a deeper question about responsibility in storytelling. What makes this really provocative is not just the twist itself but the decision to screen, possibly selectively, to avoid spoilers. That choice signals how studios manage emotional exposure, shaping what audiences encounter and what gets leaked into public discourse. In my opinion, transparency in marketing a film that handles sensitive topics should matter as much as the art itself. Otherwise, we risk misinterpretation or manipulation of public sentiment. From a broader perspective, the drama sits at the intersection of trauma reconstruction in media and the evolving appetite for boundary-pushing content. A trend worth watching is how studios calibrate satire and sentiment when the well of real pain is never truly empty. A detail I find compelling is the potential for this film to spark conversations about gun reform, cultural memory, and how society processes collective grief when filtered through fiction. What this really suggests is that audiences aren't passive. They bring moral questions to the theater door, and the film's success may hinge on whether it can host those questions without turning them into clickbait. Let's talk outcomes and implications. If the film performs well commercially, studios might push further into edgy premises that mix romance with crisis, perhaps redefining what counts as responsible shock. That would be a risky, high-reward trend. Push boundaries while investing in context, sensitivity, and clear disclaimers. Conversely, if the backlash accelerates, we could see a chilling effect where studios self-censor, fearing every emotionally loaded premise. In that scenario, audiences lose a space where difficult questions can be debated openly under a creator's helmsmanship. What this means for the industry is a tug-of-war between creative bravery and ethical precaution, a balance that only gets harder as public sentiment polarizes. Here's a takeaway I'm leaning toward. Art can provoke critical thinking about violent acts without glorifying them, but it requires thoughtful execution, explicit framing, and accountability from both writers and performers. If the drama commits to clearly contextualizing the gravity of the event and foregrounds the consequences over clever twists, it could become a conversation starter, rather than a controversy magnet. If not, it risks becoming a viral moment that everyone talks about for the wrong reasons. So what should viewers watch for in the final release? Look for how the film situates the offense within character development, how it handles the aftermath rather than the act itself, and whether the marketing communicates a meaningful intent beyond controversy. I'd also keep an eye on how critics frame the emotional arc. Is the twist used to illuminate human complexity, or is it a surface gimmick that glosses over real pain? Bottom line. This is less about celebrating a shocking premise and more about whether cinema can responsibly interrogate trauma through ambition. It raises a bigger question about where we draw the line between daring storytelling and disrespect. I'm curious to hear your take. Should films like this be allowed to exist at all, or do they demand stricter safeguards before they ever reach audiences? What do you think is the right balance between bold art and sensitivity to real families affected by violence?